Beneath the massive steel structures of Villa Park, the heart of Birmingham was preparing for a historic night. The Back to the Beginning concert would begin on the evening of July the 5th, 2025. This would be Ozzy Osbourne's final performance, but no one could predict the backstage confrontation that would unfold that night. No one yet knew how a young rock star's arrogance would be shattered to pieces in the face of the legendary Ozzy. Villa Park's backstage area resembled a bustling anthill 3 hours before the concert began. As massive names like Metallica, Slayer, and Pantera prepared, the corridors echoed with sound check tests blaring from giant speakers. 76-year-old Ozzy Osbourne was experiencing the excitement of taking the stage for the final time in his private dressing room with Sharon. With hands slightly trembling due to Parkinson's disease, Ozzy put on those iconic black leather pants and said to Sharon, "We're going to make this night unforgettable, darling." He didn't yet realize that the most unforgettable moment of the evening wouldn't be his own performance, but an encounter with a young musician. In this magnificent event organized by Tom Morello, Yungblud had also taken his place. 28-year-old Dominic Harrison, by his real name, would perform Black Sabbath's Changes as part of Supergroup A. With his stylish hair, black painted nails, and rebellious energy, he was pacing around backstage. But that evening, he had more than just performance on his mind. He wanted to see himself as Ozzy's heir. "Tonight's the night I show them who the future of rock really is," he muttered to his friends beside him. He was constantly posting stories on his phone, writing, "About to steal the show from the old legends." He didn't yet know that the real legend he would encounter that night would teach him that rock music wasn't just about talent, but also about humility. In Villa Park's main corridor, as giant Black Sabbath posters hung on the walls, Ozzy quietly emerged from his dressing room. Walking slowly on Sharon's arm, moving with slightly shaky steps due to Parkinson's effects, he heard Yungblud talking loudly on the phone around a corner. "Yeah, mate, Ozzy's done. This is my time now. Watch me show these 40,000 people what real energy looks like," the young musician was saying while live streaming on his phone. His words were sharp as knives, and even the surrounding technicians and roadies felt uncomfortable. Ozzy stopped, gently squeezed Sharon's arm and said, "Just a minute." Yungblud hadn't noticed yet, but the legend had heard him. "The thing is," Yungblud continued, speaking to thousands of followers in his live stream, "these old rockers, they had their time, but rock needs fresh blood now. I'm going to show Villa Park what the future sounds like." Standing behind him, Nuno Bettencourt and Adam Wakeman exchanged uncomfortable glances. Youngblud's words weren't just disrespectful, they were being perceived as outright insults. "Tonight, I'm not just performing. I'm taking over," he said finally, ending his phone call. At that exact moment, when he turned around, he saw Ozzy Osbourne standing before him, and his heart began racing rapidly. This encounter would change his life forever. "Ozzy!" "Mate!" Yungblud called out, his voice carrying artificial excitement. "Ready for the show? I'm about to blow everyone's minds tonight." While there was a dangerous glint in his eyes, it was also clear that he was nervous. Ozzy looked the young man up and down. For decades he had encountered arrogant young musicians like this, but he always approached them the same way, with patience and understanding. "Good luck tonight, son," Ozzy said calmly. "I'm sure you'll do great." Sharon stood beside him, observing the situation. She had noticed something odd about Yungblud's behavior, but couldn't yet predict how far he would go. But Yungblud interpreted Ozzy's polite manner as weakness. "Yeah, well," he said, raising his voice slightly. "People are here for energy tonight. They want someone who can actually move around the stage, you know? Someone who doesn't need to sit on a throne." These words shocked everyone backstage. Technicians stopped their work to look. Other musicians tried to understand what was happening. Even Metallica's members began watching this tension from the end of the corridor. Ozzy's facial expression didn't change, but the light in his eyes hardened even more. Sharon squeezed her husband's arm, but Ozzy looked at her as if to say, "Stay calm." He hadn't yet understood what Yungblud was trying to do, but he would understand very soon. "Look, Ozzy," Yungblud continued, now completely without restraint. "I respect what you did in the past, but tonight is about the future. These people need to see what rock can be with someone who still has fire in them, not someone who needs help getting to the microphone. His words were like poisoned arrows. Everyone backstage had now fallen completely silent, unable to believe this disrespect. Tony Iommi had noticed the situation from the other end of the corridor and began slowly approaching. Geezer Butler had also appeared beside him. Ozzy's closest friends, seeing the legend faced with such behavior, were preparing to intervene. Ozzy took a deep breath and laughed as if nothing had happened. But this wasn't an ordinary laugh. It was a wise laugh backed by 50 years of stage experience, the love of millions of fans, and thousands of lived experiences. "Son," he said, his voice still calm but now carrying a different weight. "Let me tell you something about fire. I've been on fire since before you were born, when I was biting heads off bats, when I was creating heavy metal with Black Sabbath. You weren't even a thought in your parents' minds." Tony Iommi had now approached them, assessing the situation. "But you know what real fire is?" Ozzy continued. "Real fire is respect. Real fire is earning your place, not demanding it." Yungblud's self-satisfied expression began to waver for the first time. He was beginning to feel the weight in Ozzy's words, but his pride prevented him from backing down. "That's exactly my point," he said, his voice no longer sounding so confident. "The old ways, the old fire. People want something new now. They want someone who represents their generation." At this point, Alice Cooper appeared from behind them, trying to understand the situation. "What's happening here?" he asked with his legendary stage presence. Ozzy replied, "Our young friend thinks we're too old for rock and roll," with a slight irony in his voice. Shock and disappointment appeared on Alice's face. "Really?" Alice said, turning toward Yungblud. "Son, I'm 77 years old and I still pack arenas. Age in rock isn't about your birth certificate. It's about your soul, your passion, your connection with the music." Tony Iommi also stepped in. "Young man, we created something that changed music forever. Every riff you play, every scream you make, it comes from what we built." Yungblud now found himself surrounded by 3 legends and realized the situation had spiraled out of control. More musicians began gathering around. Zakk Wylde, Adam Wakeman, even James Hetfield had appeared at the end of the corridor. This was no longer just an argument. It was becoming a lesson moment in rock history. "Listen, kid," Alice Cooper said, his voice paternal but serious. "I've been doing this since before your parents met. You know what I've learned? Respect is everything in this business. You earn it by lifting others up, not by tearing them down." Ozzy nodded. "When I started, I looked up to the legends before me. Little Richard, Elvis, the Beatles. I learned from them. I didn't try to push them aside." Tony added, "That's how you build a legacy, by honoring those who came before you and inspiring those who come after." Youngblood's arrogant attitude had now completely vanished, replaced by shame and regret. Under the gazes of the master musicians around him, he felt very small. The sounds of the crowd from outside Villa Park reached all the way backstage. 40,000 people were waiting for this legendary night, and here, behind the scenes, a real rock education was taking place. "You know what, son?" Ozzy said, his voice now carrying understanding rather than anger. "We all make mistakes. I made more than my share when I was young. The important thing is learning from them." Yungblud finally raised his head and looked into Ozzy's eyes. There he saw not anger, but compassion. I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was trying to, I don't know, prove myself or something, but I realize now how disrespectful I was." Just then, music suddenly erupted from Villa Park's main speakers. The opening notes of Paranoid playing for soundcheck shook the backstage area. Yungblud startled, his heart beginning to race rapidly, because he didn't yet know that this music wasn't just coincidence. It had been played at Ozzy's signal. "Son," Ozzy said, his eyes sparkling as Paranoid played, "you've got talent. But do you know what that song means? Do you know the pain behind those lyrics?" Youngblood's face went completely pale. As the music rose, that legendary riff from Tony Iommi's guitar, enveloped the entire backstage area. Alice Cooper stepped forward. "This is what legends sound like, kid. This is what you're trying to compete with." When Yungblud began saying, "I'm sorry," in a trembling voice, the music suddenly cut off. The silence made his words even more powerful. Everyone was witnessing this dramatic moment. "You don't need to be the next me," Ozzy said with a smile. "The world doesn't need another Ozzy Osbourne. It needs the first Yungblud. Be yourself, but be the best version of yourself." Tony nodded. "And remember, we're all part of the same family. Rock and roll family. We support each other." Alice added, "Competition is good, but not at the expense of respect." Yungblud took a deep breath and looked at the legends around him. "Thank you, all of you. I needed to hear this." Ozzy said, "How about we start over? I'm Ozzy. It's nice to meet you." He extended his hand and Yungblud shook it, this time with genuine respect. As the concert approached, the atmosphere had completely changed. Yungblud now possessed a different energy. He was more concentrated than ever before on his upcoming Changes performance. "I want to dedicate my performance tonight to learning from my heroes," he said to Ozzy, "and to showing respect for those who made my dreams possible." Ozzy's eyes lit up. "That's the spirit, son. Now go out there and show them what you're really made of." Tony and Alice also saw Yungblud off with supportive looks. All the musicians backstage had witnessed this transformation. That night, when Yungblud took the stage, he met Villa Park's 40,000-person crowd with a completely different energy. His Changes performance wasn't just technically perfect, it was emotionally deeply moving. Behind the stage, Ozzy, Tony, and Alice watched. "He's found it," Ozzy said, his real voice. During the performance, Yungblud looked at Ozzy and bowed his head during the song's most emotional part. At that moment, 40,000 people gave a standing ovation. They weren't just applauding Yungblud's performance, but also celebrating this beautiful transformation they had witnessed. After the concert, Yungblud ran backstage and found Ozzy. "How was that?" he asked, excited but now humbly. "That was you," Ozzy said. "The real you. And it was beautiful." Sharon also joined them. "I've never seen such a transformation in one evening," she said. "You should be proud of yourself." Youngblud's eyes filled with tears. "I learned more tonight than I have in years. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was being an idiot." Ozzy laughed. "We all need guidance sometimes, son. That's what this family is for." But no one could have predicted that the real story was just beginning. The next morning, Youngblud's phone went crazy. Music media worldwide was writing about the legendary backstage moment at Villa Park. TMZ, Rolling Stone, Kerrang, all were running this transformation story as their headline. There was a slight tremor in Youngblood's hands, but this time it was from excitement, not fear. At 10 a.m., an unexpected call came. It was Sharon Osbourne calling. "Dominic," Sharon said, her voice warm but determined. "Ozzy wants to talk with you. Can you come to the studio today?" Youngblood's heart began racing rapidly. "Of course I can come. But is everything okay?" Sharon laughed. "Don't worry. Ozzy wants to show you something special." After the phone call, Yungblud set off toward the Osbourne family home in Beverly Hills. In the car, he kept thinking, did he forgive me? Or is he going to give me an even bigger lesson? When Yungblud entered Ozzy's home studio, the legendary musician was tuning an old acoustic guitar. "Ah, Dominic, come, sit down," he said, as if nothing had happened. "I want to show you something special." Ozzy handed the guitar to Yungblud. "This guitar," he said, his eyes sparkling. "I wrote 'Mama, I'm Coming Home' with this guitar. It's been with me for 30 years. Youngblood's mouth fell open. "Why are you showing me this?" Ozzy smiled. "Because last night you reminded me what it feels like to be young and passionate about music, and I want to pass something on to you. You see, son," Ozzy continued, sitting beside the guitar, "when I was your age I made the same mistakes. I was arrogant. I thought I knew everything. But the difference is, you learned in one night what took me years to understand." Youngblood's eyes filled with tears. "I still feel terrible about what I said." Ozzy shook his head. "Don't. That moment taught us both something valuable. It reminded me why I love this music, and it showed you what really matters. Just then, Sharon also entered, carrying an album filled with old photographs. "Dominic," Sharon said, "Ozzy wants to show you something." Ozzy opened the album and showed the young Black Sabbath photographs. "Look at us in 1970, he said, smiling. "We were just kids from Birmingham, just like you're a kid from Doncaster." We had no idea what we were doing. Yungblud looked at the photos, young Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill in those early days when they were now legends. "The point is," Ozzy said, "we all start somewhere, and we all need guidance." That night they talked for a long time. Ozzy told Yungblud about his own mistakes in his younger years, the difficulties of the music industry, but most importantly, how valuable respect was. "Son," Ozzy said, "I won't be around forever. My health, you know. But I want you to remember this night. Remember that respect is everything." Youngblood's eyes filled with tears. He could feel the deep meaning behind these words. 2 weeks later, the world received the shocking news. Ozzy Osbourne had passed away on July 22nd. When Yungblud received the news, he was devastated. But their conversation that night at Ozzy's house, the lessons he had learned, had now become much more precious. Sharon's message lived on. In Ozzy's final days, what he talked about most was your transformation. You had given him hope. Yungblud spoke at Ozzy's funeral. "He taught me that legends aren't born. They're made through respect, humility, and love for music," he said, his voice trembling. "The lesson he gave me at Villa Park became the most precious gift of my life." From that day forward, Yungblud repeated Ozzy's words at every concert. Real rock stars become legends through their character. That night at Villa Park wasn't just a backstage moment, it was a legend's final gift, and this gift would live forever in Youngblood's heart.